SRBRadio.com.
S&P, Mr. Peter-Withe, an absolute legend, not just of this area, but just a legend in football. Welcome to the Biscuit Boys Show, Peter. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's getting a little bit colder down under.
Is it really?
We're into autumn, so we're the opposite way round. We're going into the winter when you're going into the summer.
How cold does it get during those autumn months?
It's probably about equivalent to our summer.
Yeah, I thought you was going to say that.
So we're about 24 today.
Yeah.
So which is 24 is about 70.
Yeah,
So it doesn't get much worse than that.
Yeah, we'd take that night of our summer, wouldn't we, Steve? All day long. What are you doing over there in Australia, Pete?
We've got a property here, so we've been doing some work on the property, and then we're probably next month I'll be back in the UK.
Okay.
So we just come down to sort a few things, and I was trying to sort my golf handicap up, because when I left here I was playing off 5, and when I came back I was playing off 12. So I've been trying to sort that out. Playing a bit of golf.
Now you and Stephen playing golf. Steve's looking at me daggers here, by the way, but you can't see the daggers. But he said he'd do you all day long over golf, Pete. Steve said that.
Yeah, all right. Well, he knows, and especially if there's a bet comes out that it's £1, he knows that I all of a sudden switch to a different mode.
So you're still doing anything with football? Because you was doing some coaching and stuff in Thailand, wasn't you?
Yeah. I worked 5 years in Thailand, and then I worked 4 years in Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back to the UK, done some work there, and then on the way back down here about 2 years ago, went back to Thailand and spoke to my old secretary, who said to me, "Why aren't you working here?" I said, "Because you haven't offered me a job here." So within 2 days I had a job in Thailand, so I worked back there for about 2 years again. But then Stephen had the granddaughter, Sky, and then my other youngest son, Gareth, had a granddaughter. So Kathy just said that we maybe needed to go and see them and spend a bit of time with them. So I basically took sabbatical, and Jason, my eldest son, took over from me at the club that I was at. So we're in that sabbatical mode at the moment. And people say to me, "Will you go back into football?" And I say, "You'd never say never," because I said that maybe a few years ago. So I don't know what's around the corner. But at the moment, we're doing what we're doing, and then if something develops, it develops.
You also, because I've heard you many times on BBC WM, done a little bit of punditry, and I have to say, you're one of the best pundits that I've heard, because you're very truthful in your analysis. Having said that, WM usually are. Is that something
I try and tell it the way it is, and I think maybe I've upset a few players in the past, and I've maybe upset a few people, but, if I see a game and I watch the game, I tell it as it is, what I see. I don't try and, waft over it a little bit and try and do something different. I try and, give my honest opinion about what I see. And that's relevant to whatever it is in football, whether it's coaching, management, assessing players, scouting players. The hardest thing that I ever done in football. The hardest thing I ever done in football was when I was director of youth of Aston Villa, and had to tell a 12-year-old that he wasn't good enough. Yeah. I could look any professional player in the eye, and I wouldn't bat an eyelid about telling him he wasn't good enough. But to tell a 12-year-old or 7-year-old, youngsters, that's the hardest thing that I've had to do in football.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Looking at Aston Villa this season, to be quite truthful, they've stunk the stadium out. They've been absolutely woeful. Back in your day, you were European champions. You can't believe, really, I'm Birmingham City through and through, but you can't believe how a mighty club like Villa are in the predicament that they're in now, can you?
Well, a journalist actually asked me how our side of 80 to 83 would do against the current side. And I said to them, we'd probably beat them 1-0. And he said, why 1-0? And I said, well, most of us are in our 60s now, so that's the reason why.
And I tell you something, Peter, and I know that's tongue-in-cheek, but my honest opinion, if you put you guys up against the current Villa team, I think you would beat them 1-0.
Yeah, sadly, I mean, it's been like this now, as you know, for 5 or 6 years, where they've been scraping through and just staying in the division. And it's, they've found someone like in Benteke or someone that scored enough goals for them to keep them up. And sadly, they haven't had anyone like that. So the demise has sort of happened. And it was inevitable that it was going to come. And you just can't go through manager after manager and go through that system and then expect, you're going to stay in the division. So it's been a woeful season with regards to, games that they've played. And I've watched them on the television, and I've watched them live before I left. And it's sad. It's very sad to see the way that they've been playing. And I think the biggest frustration is the way that it's happened, with regards to the players, because, and I don't like harking back in our days, but I'm talking about in general, not just Aston Villa, but in general, you always found that clubs had three or four players, or sometimes 2 or 3 players, who would be the dominant force and go around and shake people's heads and, crack a few heads if it needed be, to make sure that you put in the performance that warranted what the supporters were trying to watch. So, you don't seem to have that nowadays. You don't seem to have that character who's going to go around and threaten people that they need to pull the finger out and, half-time having bits of a bust-up in the dressing room and sorting it out. Sadly, we don't see that. I don't see that on the football field at this moment in time. I think you do with the better clubs, but I just don't think the clubs that are in the bottom half of the table have them sort of characters. And them characters that you find, normally they were playing for the best teams.
Yeah. Now, back in your day, let's talk about your day, because Leicester City have just won the league, and it is a phenomenal achievement. But for Forest to, under Brian Howard-Clough, to win the old second division, go up and win that in their first season, and then ultimately go on and win the European Cup and defend it, that will never ever be achieved again, and that has to be the greatest feat in football, in my opinion.
Yeah, I seen there was a couple of things on Facebook and Twitter, and one of them was there's a field trying to get Ranieri a knighthood, and I put on Facebook one of the greatest managers in the world who won with two provincial teams, won it with Derby County, won it with Nottingham Forest, won the European Cup twice, and they can't knight him. And he's from, Yorkshire, and yet they want to knight someone who's from Italy. So I just had a bit of a pop at it. Not taking it away from what Leicester have achieved. I think it's a phenomenal achievement, especially in today's game, because of the amount of money that's available in today's game. So don't take anything away. I think they've had a tremendous season. I think that they've been refreshing to watch. They've played with this, what I call a good camaraderie between the players. They don't concede many goals, and they've got people like, and I'm pleased for Vardy, because it's proved again that you can find a player in the non-league scene who comes forward. And, they've picked him up, and he's been very refreshing with his pace and the goals that he's scored. So I think it's a great achievement for Leicester City. If they can win the European Cup next year, that'll be even more of a great achievement. But we'd have to wait and see. Only time will tell on that.
I think there's more chance of me juggling Sut or playing for you and Stephen in that game and scoring a hat-trick against the Villa's old boys and a few of the supporters as well. Going forward to June, for England, would you start Vardy up front with Harry Kane? I would play Vardy for one reason. I think his pace frightens defenders, he stretches the games, and I think a player like that is just so important. And couple that with he scores goals, left foot, right foot, head, or anywhere on the pitch, I think he's a great player.
I think that there's been now, they've been pushing forward. I mean, Andy Carroll come back into the West Ham team and scored goals, and they're saying, oh yeah, you need to bring him back, you need to do this. I think that Roy's knows in his mind which the squad is going to be. And you're right, because when I was playing, and I played with Trevor, who had pace, so we had a sort of a little and large sort of situation with regards to me being the target man and then Trevor working off it. Same happened with Tony Woodcock, same happened with with Gary Shaw. And I think that would be a great asset, certainly with Kane, who's sort of big, strong. I don't look at him in the mould that I was in, but he's certainly a very good talent. And as you rightly say, Vardy's got pace and can see things, and has just got an eye for goal. And I think that this is where, when you look at Brian Clough, who never managed England, who should have been given the opportunity to manage England, he wouldn't give a monkey's. If you were 18 years old or you were 40 years old, if you were doing it week in, week out, he'd pick you. And I think that's the important thing at this moment in time, is them players have done it for the whole season. And he should, by right, stick with them players. But he's got some other options that he can work with. But I think you're right, Vardy and Kane have got, to me, two strikers who can frighten defences to death.
I think you're right. Going back to Brian Clough, I'll give everybody one name: Gary Birtles. I mean, he picked him up from non-league, and I think Nigel Jempson. I think Brian Clough's news agent told him all about Nigel Jempson, and he went and signed him. Brian always seemed to be able to pick up gems. But then when he bought what would be perceived as the finished article, they didn't quite work for him. Ian Wallace being one, and Justin Fashanu rather, being another one that didn't work there at Forest.
Yeah, well, I think that, we talk about the Clough and the Taylor era, and the movies that they've made with regards to the pair of them. And just to enlighten you a little bit more about the way that they worked, Peter Taylor was what we call the finder, and Brian Clough was the manager. So Peter Taylor used to find the talent, and this talent was, sometimes raw talent, like myself, like Gary Birtles, like Tony Woodcock. These type of players, they sort of, Peter spotted them, and then Brian brought out the best of them players. I mean, a typical example is Kenny Burns.
Yeah.
I remember Brian Clough coming to me and saying to me, Peter Taylor and Brian Clough, and saying to me, what about Kenny Burns? And my first reaction was, are you serious? So they said, what do you mean? So I said, well, he goes through these stages where he gets into trouble quite a number of times. And he said, yeah, but can he play? And I says, oh, he can play. I said, he's a talent. He's got 2 good feet, pass the ball. He's not going to run around for you, but if you want someone who's going to be able to, supply passes and stop people, yeah, and of course they signed him, and the rest was history.
Was you in that game where he headbutted the Arsenal player that was in your wall?
Yes, yeah. In fact, it was funny because we won. That was the first game we lost, basically. And it was a lad called Richie Powling who tried to push into the wall and just opened it up a little bit. And then Kenny just had one of his blockages and just headbutted him in the back of the head. But typical of Brian Clough, at half-time when we came into that dressing room, his first words was, hey, young man, you might have been a thug before, you won't be a thug for me. So it basically told him in no uncertain terms that if he wanted to do that sort of thing, he wouldn't be playing football again. That's what he actually said to him. He said, I'm your last hope, young man. If you don't play for me, you won't play for anyone.
You never trained much as well. I did watch the film. I Believe in Miracles, and Johnny Owen, who made the film, is going to be on our show within a couple of weeks. And in that film, he alluded to the fact that Forest players hardly trained.
Yeah, well, it was. You know what? We played that many games. If you look at Nottingham Forest, we won the championship with 15 players. So. You know, if you played 2 games a week, then, you know, we played on a Saturday, and then he'd say to us, see you at the game on Wednesday. So, you know, you had sort of 3 days off to regenerate your body. So it wasn't a question of coming in and just doing, you know, a little bit of run, a little bit of stretching or anything. He'd just give you time off to recharge your batteries. And I think that was one of the reasons why players of that era, as it were, and then players that played, you know, maybe a lot longer than what they probably would have done. I mean, I played till I was 39. I played my last game at 39 years old. And probably that sort of time allowing us to... And I was a runaholic, to be fair. I mean, I used to train for fun. But he used to just give you this time off just to regenerate your batteries, and it worked because when we got on that field after the break, we were running around like spring chickens.
Now I'm guessing that the other manager, who's another genius, Ron Saunders, was the polar opposite. Now I've just passed Stephen me a piece of paper. I've written down the names of 2 players. If you could pick one player from your Nottingham Forest team and one player from your Aston Villa team, who would the player from Forest and Villa be that you'd pick? That if you wanted one in your team for you, your all-time 11, who would it be?
John Robertson.
Got one out of one. Who's the next one?
Gordon Cowans.
Bang on. Thank you, Peter. And the evidence is there by your son. I've just wrote Sid Cowans and John Robertson, 2 of the greatest British players to ever grace a stadium or a pitch, and how we need players like that today.
I mean, when I was at Birmingham, I mean, we had a very, if you remember, when I first came back at Birmingham City, we had, Freddie Goodwin, who was the manager at the time, just had this thing about accumulating players, and I couldn't believe how many players that we had in our squad at the time. There was something like 35 players who'd all played in the first team. It was unbelievable, the squad that we had, and he sort of, if you remember, he sold Bob Latchford and got 3 players for Bob Latchford. So he got rid of 1 player and brought 3 players in. Of course, one of them was one of the best uncapped players, as is Dennis Mortimer, in Howard Kendall. You know, and so we had players in our team at that time, like Howard Kendall, who just went what I actually talked about. He was the one who was instrumental in organising the team and getting players to G up and things like that.
Absolutely. You played for Wolves, firstly, in the Midlands.
Yeah.
I've not researched nothing, because I don't like to research, Pete. I like to talk about football from my memory. Didn't you then go to South Africa and Birmingham brought you back from South Africa?
No.
Oh, okay, I'm wrong.
No, I actually played in South Africa and came back to Wolves from South Africa.
Got ya.
And then I went to America, and I played in America. And then Freddie Goodwin flew out to America to watch me play and signed me when I was in America. So unfortunately, he signed me and I couldn't get back for the start of the season. I missed I think it was the first 3 or 4 games, which they lost. And then when it came back, we won the next, we drew the first one and then won the next 2, and then he sacked them.
Yeah. So, I remember as a kid, Goodwin out and the board must go. There was quite a lot of that at Birmingham. Mind you, we put up with a lot of rubbish these days and we don't do much about it. Before I leave, you know, your time has been much appreciated, and we're going to draw it to an end. A pre-season tour, it was either Holland or Belgium. Joe Gallagher told me about it. There was the likes of you, Gary Jones, Kenny Burns. You had a bit of a ruck in a bar.
Yes, we went to, it was Holland actually.
Yeah.
we played, and then the manager, it was Willie Bell, who took over then, and I was just coming back from a cartilage operation. So I went on the tour just to play maybe 15, 20 minutes in the games. And we all went in our separate ways, as it were, and found bars. And then we found this little quiet bar. I was with Joe, and Trevor Francis was with Tony Want in the bar. And then all of a sudden, from nowhere, Burnsy and Jonah come in, and there was a snooker table in the middle of the bar. And then we were just sitting, Joe Gallagher and I were just sitting on these stools watching. Burnsy wanted to get involved because he liked snooker, and Jonah said, yeah, come on, we'll have a doubles match. And then I don't know what happened in the end, but I know that all of a sudden Jonah come and sat in between me and Joe, and this guy come over and sort of pointed a finger at him and spoke to him in Dutch, and all of a sudden slapped him around the face, which we thought, no, we're not having that. So it kicked off then. So it was, and it was funny because it kicked off and everyone was sort of doing it. And I just remember looking over at Trevor and Tony once, and they were just watching, things flying over their head. Yeah, okay, we've got to go now.
Right, we're going to wrap it on a good one. Pete, can I thank you so much for your time? And
okay, no problem.
When you come back to Birmingham, you'll have to come in here with Steve, and we'll talk about football forever and a day. And good luck with everything that you do moving forward.
Okay, thanks for that. Enjoy.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Peter.
Bye.
Bye.
SRBRadio.com